Now, this is sort of kind of newsworthy. The Washington Post recently unearthed a still photo of Dallas Cowboy owner Jerry Jones in 1957 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, journey back in time, if you will, with me, to 1957 in America. This particular still image is a photo of what was commonly known or referred to as the Little Rock Nine. These were 9 African American students who were integrating an all-white high school in 1957. This was the first case at the high school level of integration. And in this still photo, the Washington Post has circled Jerry Jones. And we're really going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about some things that they're not talking about. Because that's just as important. You know, a note. What people talk about is important. But what people don't talk about is just as important. Now, the still image, in it, I don't see any teenage girls. It's all teenage boys. And you can barely make out maybe 2 or 3 African American men. They're teenagers as well. And there's a group of white teenage boys gathered. And what it looks like is they're blocking the entrance, not allowing them to go inside. And the picture is very negative. When I first saw it, the image, it was a dark aura around the image. It looks insidious. You could just tell that it was mean. The energy there was negative. It was hatred, bigotry. Violence. Now, that was 63 years ago in America. You know, they say a lot has changed in 63 years. And that's true. A lot has changed. But they say change as though change only happens for the better. And there's been no change for the worse. They act as though change is always a positive. Or that it either has to be positive or negative. It can't be both positive and negative. That's very interesting how people perceive and view change. But yes, changes happen. There's been positive changes. And there's been negative changes. But change is relative depending on what we're talking about here. You know, a lot of people love to say, back in my day we did this, back in my day we did that. And usually when they say back in my day, they say it as if it was a positive. Like everything back in the day was just honky-dory, great, smooth sailing. And you notice who usually says those kind of things back in my day. It's usually men. Men of privilege, stature in our society. And it's like a longingness or a fondness for it. Well, back in my day, you didn't used to talk to me like that. And we have to really examine that. Because back in the 1950s, it wasn't honky-dory for every American. Not at all. You know, there were people, lots of Americans, who hated other Americans. There still are. But the hatred was really thick and steep. And it came with a severe price. A severe price. There's this concept or notion, and now it's been shattered by this still image. And let me tell you what that concept or notion is. It's this concept or notion that after the Civil War in America, which ended in 1865, African Americans were allowed to peacefully coexist in America. That's the notion or concept or narrative. And we know that's just not true. There was a huge and great migration from the South to the North due to the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, where Confederate soldiers did not surrender, as been commonly written in the history books. That's a lie. Many Confederate soldiers went on to form vigilante mobs in the South, continuing to lynch and murder Black Americans. And that's why we had a great migration from the South to the North. That's why Chicago grew in African American population. Detroit, Cleveland, Youngstown. Because of violence in the South. This narrative, myth, that after the Civil War, everything was honky-dory in this country, is a complete and utter lie. Now we go to 1957. 1957 is long after 1865, for those of us who do math. And think about that. You still, up until 1957, did not have an integrated school in America. Now, if you think about it like that, from 1776 to 1957, That doesn't sound too good now, does it? So we can't teach it that way. You know, we can't do math when it comes to these types of things. And that was always the general consensus, that people were going to try to change in America. And that people's past and this country's dark, tormented history would sort of kind of be shelved. But now we've got America first, back again. Now they're trying to act like America first is new. And it has anything to do with putting Americans first. You know, I don't know how you can have a name, first and foremost, to all you Nazis who watch, and I know there's many. I don't know how you can have a name called America First, but then so many of your fellow Americans you put last. You try to starve. You genocide. Why don't you call it what it is? I won't use the terminology, but you know what we're talking about here. It's not about America. Because it's not inclusive of all Americans. Make America great again. I said, give me a time and a date when it was great. And you know they never could. Not a trick question. I said, give me a time and a day when it was great. When we beat the Nazis. You know that one of these fucking clowns said this. When we beat the Nazis. We beat the Nazis? Oh, I thought there were Nazi rallies in America. Some of the largest Nazi rallies were held at Madison Square Garden. They have the footage. They have all the attendees. Their names. Lots of prominent people in American society were in Madison Square Garden giving the Nazi salute. We all know. But we keep it shelved. Apparently people feel emboldened again. I wonder where that comes from. Oh no, I don't have to wonder. I know. It's a still image of 1957. Bathrooms were labeled. Men, women, colored. Water fountains were labeled. White only. Colored only. Businesses accepted white people and accepted colored people, and vice versa. You know, at the same time America was running an apartheid, South Africa was too. Now, we were kind of judgmental in the 80s. We said, South Africa is running an apartheid. We knew what we were talking about because we were in one too, and still do. Oh, yes, we do. Now, this still image of Jerry Jones. Stick with me on this. He in the photo doesn't look menacing. And he's come out and he's given an explanation. He said that he was a curious young man. Curious as to what was happening. Everyone was. I don't doubt that. I know some of you are going to say, wait a minute. You don't doubt that he's lying? I didn't say that either. He could be telling the truth. He could be lying. I don't know. I wasn't there. But it doesn't look like he's menacing in the photo, even though the still image is very menacing, the overall picture. He himself does look kind of curious. But that's the surface. You know I never stick with the surface because there's always something underneath. You know, there's a lot of still images of Charles Manson smiling and laughing, kissing, dancing. He was a groovy kind of guy in the 60s. Oh, he had the long hair. He was a hippie, holding records and cassettes. John Wayne Gacy. There's still images of him laughing, drinking, partying. It's just that it's a still image. We don't know what happened afterwards. But we do know we had a history of bad things happen. Okay, so those students got bullied. And when I'm talking about bullying, I don't mean to minimize what happens nowadays. But I'm talking about people spitting on you, punching you, kicking you, putting cigars out on you, completely violating your body, your personal space. On a side note, but not really, America, you've always been a bully nation. You bully everyone. And then you wonder why bullies get created. You make them. I don't know what it is. It's like some rite of sick passage that the Americans have. Every time a new group of immigrants come to the country, somehow they have to be bullied in order for them to become Americans. We can't just be welcoming and kind and nice people. That's too much to ask Americans. We have to bully and denigrate, humiliate, lynch, murder immigrants to this country. We have to torture people for choosing to immigrate here. Now, the only group of people who never did this were the First Nation people. They were welcoming. Boy, did they welcome some very, very, we'll leave it at that. But they were welcoming. And ever since, nobody else has been. I said it a long time ago. We have to have a welcoming society. We have to be able and willing to welcome everyone. You know, they're trying to communicate with Martians on Mars. What? So they can come here and you can bully them? You don't even get along with other humans. How are you going to get along with aliens? I'm telling you, completely ridiculous. And I'll have to do a video about that, where aliens should go if they come to the earth. Avoid America. And avoid most of Western Europe. Bunch of bullies. Back to Jerry Jones, because this is important. They were out there to bully those 9 black students. And why? Because there were more of them. Going back to bully culture, isn't that what a bully does? It picks on someone or something or a group of people it thinks are smaller or weaker than them. Here it is in that whole entire photo, there's like maybe 20 or 30 white young men. And there's 9 students, and they're getting all in their face, cursing them out, calling them the N-word, spitting on them. Now ask yourself, would they have done that if their numbers were equal? No. But that's what bullies do. They try to prey on weakness. That's what racism really is about, in a nutshell. Bullying. Oh, yes. That's why I don't understand why adults try to pretend they don't understand why you go around bullying. Americans, all you do, you adults, you adults, you never graduated high school. All of you, you're bullies. Don't be shocked when your kids bully other kids. You're bullies. Did you see the parents who went into the school board meetings? Do you think they would have been the nice type of people to hang out with in high school? I don't think so. One woman was sitting there and she said, "This is preposterous." And they ran the microphone away from her. But I heard what she said next. She said they ought to be ashamed of their behavior. Ought to is the key and operative word. Ought to be ashamed of their behavior. Abhorrent behavior. Screaming and yelling, throwing things. 40 and 50-year-old men and women behaving like savages, heathens, barbarians. Abhorrent behavior, deplorable. And then you look at the Jerry Jones photo and you see the same thing. A lot's changed. Sure. But you want to know what hasn't changed, Americans? Your abhorrent behavior. No, that hasn't changed at all. Everybody wants to point the finger. Oh, look at this, look at that, look at this. Didn't you vote for an awful leader to be your president, your leader? Think about that. You let a lunatic run your whole entire government for 4 years. And then 75 million of you said, "Oh, let me vote for him again. He's doing a great job." Tweeting negativity on Twitter. Firing people in his office. Name calling his adversaries. Let me rehire the dude. Bullies. nation full of bullies. That's Americans. You're bullies. Wear it with a badge of courage. Don't be ashamed of it now. You know, they're trying to say that BLM, Black Lives Matter, is worse than the civil rights movement. Black Lives Matter was mostly college students holding cardboard signs with microphones, marching down the street. The civil rights movement was more violent than the Civil War. Think about that. In the preceding time period from 1865 to 1970, way more than 700,000 Americans lost their life in the fight for civil rights. Way more. We're just now unpacking and unshelving things. You know, 1923, they had cameras, right? People were taking photos, right? People submitted things to the National and Congressional Archives, correct? They had video footage, correct? All of that is there. And it's so painful, sick, disgusting, evil, grotesque. That we don't want to talk about it. But then when we see sickness come about again in the society, we pretend we don't know where it's from. You know, they say nobody complains when it's sunny outside. They only complain when it rains. And when it rains, it pours. And I swear that's true. When things are going good in the society, for certain people, there's no complaint. But when things start taking a little bit of a twist and turn, then there's complaints and finger pointing. Or when people who haven't had rights demand them, then there's finger pointing. Jerry Jones said he was 15. And that's a young man. That is correct. But John Lewis was 25. when he was beat to within inches of losing his life in Edmund Pettus Bridge. Martin Luther King Jr. was 25 when he gave the I Have a Dream speech on the National Mall. I think that there's this notion of excuse that we give to some youth in our society that we don't adjudicate on others. A lot of people were young in 1957, 1958, 1959, 1960, and all the way through the 60s and 70s. There were people that were young. That took courageous stance and lost their life. You know, we remember our own here. Summer Taylor. And Summer said something that was impactful, and I want to unpack it for us. Before she went to the protest, their parent asked them, aren't you a bit hesitant or afraid? Because this movement for Black Lives Matter, it's happened before in this country. And there was a severe pushback to it. Are you cognizant of that? And Summer said, I'm very cognizant of that. But that's what Black Americans experience every day of their existence in this country. Complete and utter fear. You know, Americans say, we the people. But Jerry, they weren't chanting we the people as those 9 Little Rock Black Americans were trying to integrate that school. Now were they? They had another chant. You remember it, Jerry. I know you do. 2468. We will never integrate. That's what they chanted, Jerry, in 1957. 1958, 1959, 1960. Ruby Bridges. I think some of us have seen the images of Ruby, the steel shot footage of her being escorted into the school with United States Marshals present. Ruby Bridges said she thought it was a parade. There were so many people lined on both sides of the school. She said she thought it was a parade. She didn't know what was happening. She remembers them screaming at her as a child, throwing things, spitting. When you're 9 years old, it's a blur. You don't remember. It's only later. But those scars stick with you for a lifetime. Now at 15, you definitely remember things. Yes, you're still a juvenile, but you know. Look, in 1957, didn't they used to slick back their hair with grease? Did anybody used to see or has seen Fast Times at Richmond High? They talk about the kids in school now. You kids in school now, you're tamed. You're tamed. You're reserved. You're mal-mannered. You're civilized. Boy, you should watch Fast Times at Richmond High. There's this notion that youth back in the day were better. I don't know where they get that from. Because all the evidence and the data points to the exact opposite. But that's a narrative that was created and choreographed to mass atrocities. They put a mask on history. The history of this country. The true history. They put a mask on it. And they buried it. And so they tell you about the looting and the burning and the destruction of buildings for Black Lives Matter. But in the 60s, way more buildings burned. There were way more riots. There was more violence. Way more violence and hatred. You know, the president at the time, John Kennedy, he spoke about owing the nation a constructive change, an obligation to heed the winds of history. And his address to the nation endorsing a civil rights bill. That it was time to do what was necessary. What the will of the American citizenry demanded. we have an obligation to the nation to do what's necessary. You have to be able to see the times, and a lot of people can't. They're mired in their present and can't see objectively in the future. Jerry thought, oh, I was there and I was curious. And maybe I bullied, maybe I didn't. I don't remember. Everybody just knew it was a big deal. Jerry couldn't imagine that Barack Obama would be the first African American president in this country. Not in 1957. No one could. You know, they don't want to tell you this story. A Polish woman was on a military bus. She was a nurse. And a lot of the returning Americans were on the bus. And there were some Germans on the bus as well. They were prisoners of war, scientists, different professions, but they were affiliated with the Nazi Party. And they were being transported by the United States military. They're saying, "Purple, how do you know this?" We know everything. And the Polish nurse remembers something. There was a particular stop when they entered a city in the South. And all of the African American GIs got off the bus. And the bus proceeded into the town. The Polish nurse said the Germans asked her, why did they all get off the bus at that stop? And the Polish nurse said they had to get off. Because if they had gone any further, they might have lost their life. The Germans were confused. They said, what? I don't understand. What do you mean, lost their life? The Polish nurse said they can't go into a certain place because they're black. And the Germans say, wait, that's the same thing we were doing. And they came and liberated. America said that they're not for this. The Polish nurse said even the Germans started to cry because they thought that they had gotten to America and that thing didn't happen. There's a certain type of peculiar sickness in America. Americans don't want to admit that they're sick. Now, I say this all the time. The first step to recovery is to admit that you're sick. And people go to the doctor all the time and say, "Doctor, I don't feel sick." And the doctor does an examination and says, "You're not sick. Perfectly healthy." Coronavirus was interesting, right? It was very interesting. Some people were asymptomatic. They had the virus, but there were no symptoms. Now, if you can be asymptomatic with a virus and not know you have it, you can definitely be racist and not know you're racist. Isn't it interesting that nearly 42 million Americans say this country is racist? And yet everyone in America says, "I'm not a racist." How can so many millions of Americans say their country is racist and then no one in the country be racist? Are the trees racist? Do they discriminate? Do the chickens discriminate? The cows, the pigs, the horses? Do the pumpkins discriminate? "42 million Americans have said they have experienced racism in this country." There's not a single African American in this country who has not said that they've experienced racism. And yet, no one in America is a racist. It's a mystery. Now, I don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to know something is not adding up. Millions of citizens say they've experienced racism. However, no one in the country admits to being a racist. Fascinating, amazing. Can you imagine the mathematical improbability of such a claim? It's impossible, right? I guarantee you, a lot of people in that photo were chanting awful things and wanted to do awful things to those 9 students. Whether Jerry Jones was one of those individuals that was negative and wanting to harm and bullying is irrelevant. What is relevant is it happened in America. And it continues to happen in America. It never stopped happening in America. That's what the still photo, that's what I take away from it. When he said, "Make America great again," I said, "Make it racist again." But oh wait, it never was not racist. I mean, it had to be racist to elect him. And people will say, no, 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 that can't be true because America elected Barack Obama. America didn't elect Barack Obama. Young people elected Barack Obama. And then some of those young people grew older and more conditioned to the racist system and decided, no, I don't like what I did. You know, as you get older, generally, you get more accustomed to the racism in our society. You start to say that, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not that detrimental. People are exaggerating. You start to come up with excuses to justify evil. As you grow older in the system. You know, one of the things I'm aware of is the resurgency of the popularity around Nazism. How Nazis have tried to rebrand themselves as being hip and cool. As though the notion of genocide, hatred, racism, misogyny is something to be, well, celebrated in our society. And it gives me great joy to see it. The pushback to it. The youth who just won't accept it. And I feel that they far exceed these young Nazis. Oh, it's like 20 or 30 to 1. That is a change, I will say. Because in 1957, American youth were racist. Yes, American youth were racist. Those are the people who are still running your country. And then people say, well, why is racism still a thing? Because young racists became older racists and got into government, civil service, different professions. And they control wealth. That's why your society is still sick and racist. Now, the youth of today, you have to be very careful with one thing. The allure of celebrity. You know, they call it an influencer. And nowadays you have all of these influencers. People just like you who create this illusion of a following. And conservatives have mastered the idea of trying to persuade you the toxicity is positivity. You see influencers like Andrew Tate make a name for himself by demeaning women and girls in society. You see people like Nick Fluentes make a name for himself by openly being an anti-Semite and a Nazi. So what I would say to young people is be very careful about the allure of celebrity. Because they're using that as a strategy and tactic to try to captivate the mind. to make hate profitable, to try to make it cool and hip. Oh, it's trendy to believe in conspiracy theories, to accuse people you don't know of grotesque crimes. That's trendy on the conservative right spectrum nowadays. But the real reason that's trendy is because they don't want to share where that originates from. The dehumanizing of other people until you see them as something that's evil. And then you can do cruel things to them. That's Nazism. That's the ideology. That's why they call Adolf Hitler a great propagandist. Because he was able to orally master the effect of presenting something as being evil. And he was altruistic and good in nature, trying to preserve nationalism. And so usually what fascists do is they mask their ideology in religion and patriotism. Things that are hard to criticize, because then it makes you look as a detractor to the nation. To cults that you know people have a large following and belief system. This is what they do. They mask Nazism in religion and patriotism. A lot of folks in the 1950s and 1960s and 1970s in this country thought fighting against civil rights was patriotic. That this would be the end of America if black people gained civil rights. And a lot of modern young conservatives really have an issue with African Americans in this country being afforded the same rights as white American citizens. They really have an issue with it. But they don't come out and say that. They chip away at the edges. Whether it's voting rights, affirmative action, rights to contraception and bodily autonomy of women. This is all the intended purpose of those things. To demonize and villainize. To dehumanize. And then so they can torture again. So they can be cruel again. You have to understand, there are cruel entities on this planet. And they justify their cruelty through whatever means necessary, hoping to sucker people into believing stupid and outlandish things. Like, for instance, no matter what they do, they're saved if they believe in their Lord and Savior. Now, we know they made all of that up in their mind. And their mind has tricked them into believing that just because they make up a lie that it's true. But you can tell yourself a lie all you want. No such thing is true. They've been trying to justify their despicable nature their depravity for centuries, latching on to anything they could find to do so. So ancient mythology transcends to religion so they can justify their barbarianism. It's just that simple. Folks say, is Jerry Jones a racist? Ask Jerry that question. Jerry Jones, are you a racist? Of course he's going to say no. I've never been a racist. No one ever admits to being a racist. Have you ever gone outside and asked anybody, are you a criminal? What do you think the response is going to be if you ask anybody in the general society, are you a criminal? Are you going to find anybody that says, yes, I'm a criminal? Anyone that admits they're a criminal, they might not be a real criminal. They wouldn't out themselves so easily. Now would they? And if they admit to being a criminal, can you ask them what crime they committed? Well, back in the day, I stole a Snicker. Okay. You're not really a criminal. You're telling on yourself how stupid you are. So by that same notion, nobody is going to say, yes, I'm a racist. I once used the N-word. Nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to admit to being a racist. Jerry Jones knows whether he's racist or not. The American society knows whether Jerry Jones is racist or not. That's the same thing they asked the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago, are you a racist? And he said, in a room with a black woman as a moderator, I'm the least racist person in the room. You know, I was watching that shit and I had tea. And the tea came spitting right out of my mouth. He said, I'm the least racist person in the room. I don't have a racist bone in my body. He doesn't believe he's a criminal either. Did you commit any crimes, Mr. President? No, I didn't commit any crimes. This is a witch hunt. Which witch told him to take classified documents and put it in a tool shed by the pool? Let me know which witch told you to do that. See, nobody's ever going to admit that they got issues. I mean, you can go outside and see America has plenty of issues. And who do you think has been owning everything? Jerry Jones is an owner of an NFL football team. He's done pretty well for himself. And people will say, oh, well, the Dallas Cowboy players are black. And they get paid millions of dollars. He can't be a racist. Didn't gladiators get paid to fight in the arena as well? we doing here? Did not gladiators get compensated to fight in arenas? That's why they became gladiators, right? Sometimes I wonder about certain people and their IQ in this country. Because he pays people does not mean he's not a racist. I know so many men like Jerry Jones never paid black Americans. And that's why I said, in order to repair the nation, this country should do reparations. I said that back in February. We're in November. You think a stubborn, hard-headed, racist nation with about 1 month left to go in the year is going to do anything? We shall see. I said by Christmas. It's not Christmas yet. Look. Examine the still image and see what you see. Cover up Jerry Jones's face and see what you see. Uncover Jerry Jones' face and see what you see. Cover up most of the faces and see what you see. Play that game for about 20 minutes and tell me what you see. You know, they had a song, do you see what I see? I see what you see. Maybe you won't see what I see. Maybe you'll see what I see, but don't admit that you see what I see. Maybe you'll see something that I don't see. Maybe you'll see nothing. Maybe you'll like what you see. Maybe you'll dislike what you see. Maybe you'll love what you see. Maybe you'll hate what you see. But one thing's for sure, you see it. And you can't unsee what you see. The Washington Post says their tagline, this one is a big one. Democracy dies in darkness. This is a dark country. The fact that Americans can't admit to such is a shame. And maybe that's what's causing the problem. You know, you cannot get better unless you admit you're not well. People are sick again. You can't even find sinus spray in the stores. Have you gone to the store? Vicks Vapor Rub, NyQuil, Robitussin, Mucinex. It's all gone off the shelves. You're sick again. And it's this persistent and stubborn sickness of the fact of rebellion and stubbornness. The ancients say you never get sick if you do what you need to do. I used to say bullshit. Now I'm like, oh shit. The ancients were right. They say you never get sick if you do what you need to do. And that's true. Americans don't want to do what they need to do, and that is why you're sick. It's not the government's fault. It's not the deep state's fault. It's not the pharmaceutical industry's fault. No, it's the citizen. It's your fault. You're sick. No little monster ever came to me and told me to bully someone. I'm sorry, I never saw any red-faced, horned demon come knocking at my door telling me, hey, don't like Jewish people, don't like Italian people, don't like German people, don't like Irish people, don't like Mexican people. No demon ever visited me and told me these things. That's in your mind. That's in your heart. People want to point the finger at something else. But there's nothing left to blame but you. Americans are out of excuses. There's nothing left to blame. They used to blame communism. Communists go, well, I don't know where there's communism. Then they used to blame religion. Oh, it's the Muslims. It's this denomination of Christianity. It's this denomination of Judaism. That got old and tiresome. Now they're blaming women, the LGBTQ plus community. But everybody's saying, for what? They don't run shit. You know, they cannot blame anything but themselves at this point. They're looking for something. I swear by December it's going to be Martians. It must be UFOs on the planet. Anything that abdicate themselves of this quagmire. This mess. Oh, I heard Jenna Ellis. Get this one, you all. I heard Jenna Ellis, one of the former president's lawyers. She was talking about the victims of Club Q. And she said, you know, everybody's talking about how tragic it was, the shooting. But nobody's talking about their souls. And whether they believed in Christ Jesus. And if they didn't, then they're in eternal damnation. I said, I ain't no bullshit when I see it. Hello, does anybody know what my first thought was when I heard Jenna say such a thing. Anybody care to venture a guess? I said, wait a minute. Jenna, Miss Alice, you're going to talk about souls, are we now? Oh, okay, interesting. If we're going to go there, don't we have to acknowledge that this is Babylon? She wanted to go biblical, so I gotta go biblical on you. This is Babylon. Okay, I know they call it America. First Nation used to call it Turtle Island. Ancients used to call it Insane Asylum. It's had a lot of names. We'll go with Babylon. Can you believe this? A Babylonian, let's keep it classy here, shall we? A Babylonian is going to judge other Babylonians and say that their souls might be trapped. Wait, I thought that everybody in Babylon was a heathen, a pagan, greedy, gluttony, adulteress. When did that change? Let me know. Oh, we have Christians in Babylon. Oh, yeah. We have Christians in Babylon. Now, it is true, we do have Christians in Babylon. But we have a lot of religious people in Babylon. It's not just Christians. There are religious Muslims. There are religious Jewish people. Religious Buddhist people. We have a lot of religious people. Hindus. All kinds of religions. Wiccan, pagan. How is a Babylonian going to judge another Babylonian? I couldn't understand this. Well, Jenna said if you believe in Christ, your soul is saved. I guess the other part of that is there's a big bearded dude in the sky watching over all of us. I mean, when do you stop believing in fairy tales and bullshit? You know, conservatives love to say that liberals play the race card. But they love to play the Christian card. It's a get out of jail free card. Anything you do, all you have to say is, I'm Christian. That's the card they've been playing for centuries. Everybody else is going to hell but them. One of these days, they're going to have to produce the certificate with their name on it, where we see that God has stamped their approval for heaven. Because they always are telling you who's going to hell, but I want to see their certificate where they're going to heaven. Don't tell me anybody is going to hell. Let me see your paperwork to heaven. That's what we got to start asking for. Their paperwork to heaven. I want to see their name and certificate. Then I'll make a photocopy and white out their name and put mine on there. Trick God that way. A load of bullshit. Who says that Babylon isn't hell? Who told the Babylonians that they're not in hell? They're certainly not running it too well. You know, the ancients used to say this is an insane asylum. But even they had rules. The First Nation, they had rules. They didn't chop down all the trees, kill up all the animals. You, Jenna Ellis, you have a lot of whale nerve to talk about souls. The folks you hang around, Jenna, do they even have a soul? Does Jenna have a soul? You know, they say this is a battle for the soul of the nation. Babylon. Jerry Jones, 1957. 63 years ago. Americans, go look outside. Go walk the block. One or two, maybe three. In a neighborhood that isn't yours. In a community that isn't yours. In a city that isn't yours. Maybe even in a state that's not yours. Is every American doing well right now? I know inflation is a really big deal. What is it, 7% here in America? It's 11.1% in London right now. 11%. And London said if it goes any higher, well, I won't say or use the terminology that they talked and spoke concerning America. And a lot of other nations are being impacted by this too. And they're saying the same thing. They're done waiting. They're not going to wait on America. Oh, you're about to be first, America. Babylon, you're about to be first. That's what everybody's saying. You want to be first. You're going to be first. America first. Now, the ancients used to say, be careful what you wish for. Because you just might get it. All these people were saying America first. You're going to be first. Everybody hopes you're first too. There's nobody rooting against you being first. They're saying, please, America, go first. Please. They're begging America to go first. I'll leave it at that. Because I think a lot of people know what that truly means. I think they do, deep down inside. Jerry said, I want to be first in line for diversity. See, this is the type of bullshit Americans have been saying. Here they go again with the bullshit. Different day, more bullshit. I think people don't even hear themselves anymore. They've been bullshitting for so long they don't even hear themselves. I really do. Everybody else just sits back and laughs at us now. We're the laughing stock of the nation. The whole planet is laughing at America. Some people will say, oh, it's the leadership. Well, we the people. You're a republic. I mean, you run things. That's what you say. So they have a right to laugh at us as people. And some things we say are laughable. I want to be the first in line for diversity. Jerry Jones said this. It's been 63 years since he was in that photo. What has he done to put himself first in line? See, this is, you can forgive somebody that's 15 for juvenile mistakes. But what do you say to a 63-year-old individual when they say, I want to be first in line for diversity? You're going to say the same thing to a 15-year-old that you're going to say to a 63-year-old? I don't think so. What I would have said to the 15-year-old is don't bully. What I would say to the 63-year-old is go to hell. Come on, you've had 63 years, Jerry. And this is Americans in general. You've been bullshitting. A long time now. And I don't know if Americans know this, but nobody likes you goofies. Nobody. Everywhere I've always gone, they say, I cannot stand the Americans. And they know I'm American. If I'm being frank and want to entertain that discussion, I tell them I can't either. They're full of bullshit. I completely agree. You get no disagreement from me. Oh, they don't like Americans in South America either. How do you have a whole continent? Think about this. How do you have a whole continent and people on your continent don't even like each other? You say, oh, there's conflicts on a lot of continents. The Americas is the worst continent for violence. The worst. And you know what makes it the worst? America. Everybody says you're a negative influence on them. And it's kind of true. Not only are we a negative influence on the continent, on the globe. Globally, we're a negative influence. What do you think somebody hears when they say, I want to be the first in line for diversity? And in South America, they're like, haven't you been starving us out? Oh, whole Latin America has been neglected and starved out, pillaged and plundered. So much for love thy neighbor, right? This is why people want America to go first. Because they're sick of Americans. And you goofies don't like each other either. So they're like, wait a minute. This is what's really confusing to people who don't like America. And that's everybody but Americans. This is what's really confusing to them. They say, wait a minute. You Americans don't even like your own citizens? I say, yes. I say, well, at least we know that we're not the only ones. I tell them, no. Rest assured, everyone hates Americans. Americans hate other Americans. They say, please go first. Now, Americans. First, it's going to come quickly. When you win first prize, there's a sudden rush, certain euphoria. I'm trying to say America is not ready to go first. But the general consensus is you're ready to go first. So, I'm not going to push back anymore. America, you're going to go first. Jerry Jones, you want to be the first in line for diversity. Well, you better go first. You've had 63 years. Make it good. Throw a Hail Mary, Gary. There's about 1 second left in the game. You're going to need a Hail Mary. Now, I know you had Tony Romo as a quarterback. Romo was a little flaky. Some good days, some bad. Not consistent. You know, the Cowboys haven't been that great in a long time. They're America's football team, the Dallas Cowboys. That's America's team. Jerry Jones is legendary. He said, I want to go first. I didn't say it. He said it. You look at that photo. Oh, we're definitely going first. I literally got folks saying, the moment America goes first, they're going to cork a champagne bottle and celebrate forever that we went first. They want to rub it in. I get it. They have every right to do it. People know they haven't been good in this country. That's why I said a Babylonian judging another Babylonian. What a joke. Come on now. You look at that photo. That's the country in a nutshell. People don't want to admit it. They want to say it's not them. Jerry couldn't say it's not me. It's clearly him. Clear as day. So he said, I was curious. Curious. You know, you reap what you sow. Folks know what they did. Everybody knows what they did. I'm the only person advocating for Babylon. Everybody's like, you've lost your mind. You're advocating for the Babylonians? Yeah. Look. When it's over, they're going to put my head on a pike too. They say, Purple, it's not personal. We really love you. But it is what it is. I don't take it personally. I don't. I know what this country did. You reap what you ultimately sow. And they're still being stubborn. I think that's what everybody is laughing about. Americans are still being stubborn. I'm like, they're like, wait a minute. You're advocating for them and they're stubborn about the advocating. They say this is incredible. No. I say you don't know the Babylonians. They're trifling. I'm sick of them too. I wish they'd go first too. In 1957. You know, the congressman from Illinois, who was a conservative and really rode on the wave of the Tea Party, Matt Walsh, really was highly critical of former President Barack Obama. Now, you have to ask yourself, the former president gave the Americans health care. They had been talking about health care for the nearly 60 years in America. President after president, administration after administration, both political parties wanted to do something about health care. And it finally got done. And Americans started clowning about better health care. Said that they didn't want health care. American, have you ever asked yourself, why do you think that you're the only nation on the planet that doesn't have universal health care? Why do you think that is? Do you know? I'll tell you. Because certain Americans who control the country would rather watch people in agony die miserable deaths than to provide proper health care to all Americans. Translation, if you had universal health care, Black Americans would use it. And they simply don't want that. That's why you don't have universal health care in a nutshell. Racism. Oh, everybody knows that. They just don't say it. Everybody wants America to go first. Jerry Jones wants to go first. You know, without any further ado, give the people what they want. And no, I'm not doing no stupid damn Twitter poll. Hello, Twitter is filled with bots. The notion that I would go on an internet and take a poll and say that this is the will of the people. What, the will of the person who has 10 accounts? 75% of their users are males. 2/3 of their users are Americans. You talk about a rigged election. That's rigged to the hilt. I know there's this really smart dude that's doing that. Supposedly really smart. In you all's world, these people are intelligent. Come on, a Twitter poll is the will of the people? There's whole bot farms. Most of the users on Twitter are bots. They're not even humans. None of that is pertinent or relevant. No. We already took the poll. The people took the poll. The real people. Globally, the real global people took the poll. And they all voted unanimously for America to go first. And we're definitely going to go first. You look at that photo, 1957. It's not like they haven't had time, right? Usually I come up with some type of excuse. Some kind of rationale. But they're like, you're out of excuses. And they ain't lying. I'm really out of excuses. You know, I'm not going to cover up bullshit. That ain't me. I think by now most folks know that ain't me. I'm not going to cover up bullshit. "63 years. Jerry Jones has had 63 years. Ignore when he was 15. What about when he was 25, 35, 45, 55? Anything? Come on, something? A little bit? Nothing at all? Okay. No, we're not going to play that game. We're going to play America first. That's the game we're going to play. America first. Oh, it's a good one. Everybody's going to enjoy watching. It doesn't give me any joy. I want Americans to understand this. It doesn't give me any joy. Folks will be like, you're gloating. No. A nemesis doesn't come and tell you, hey, this is good advice, do this. A nemesis doesn't offer deals. A nemesis doesn't tell you, hey, you're on bullshit. I wish a nemesis would do that. Let me know which one you know that does that. A nemesis? No. Folks have been bullshitting. And now the bullshitting is up. It's just that simple. The emperor has no clothes. We see now the utter ridiculousness of it is abundantly clear. So it gives me no great joy. Hey, it's the Titanic. Didn't everybody go down with the boat? That's what I thought. We're definitely going first. Oh, yeah. You know, an ancient told me that. I didn't really understand it when this ancient said it. And I wasn't in the country when the ancient told me this. Said America is going to go first. But the ancient didn't say America. The ancient said Babylon is going first. All you Babylonians are getting it. That's what this ancient said. You're going to get it first. I would say may the odds be ever in your favor, but I already know. "63 years of bullshit. There's 1 month left in this year. You think the stubborn Americans are going to listen? But how many days left? Everybody's just watching their clock, circling another day on the calendar. They're waiting. They know you're stubborn and you're not going to listen. Look, if I know you're stubborn, they definitely know. They got their champagne ready. They got their cork sitting right next to it. They can't wait. Oh, it's America first, all right. It's going to be America first.